My name is Lewis. I never thought I'd be telling this story. If you had told me a few months ago that I'd be sitting here talking about how my marriage fell apart, I would have laughed it off. But life has a way of throwing you straight into the fire when you least expect it. This isn't just another cheating story. No, this one gets messy. Real messy. I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, how I uncovered my wife's lies, how I played along while secretly setting up my own plan, and how I made sure she faced the full consequences of her betrayal. And along the way, I'll share the brutal lessons I learned. If you're in a relationship, man or woman, you need to hear this. So buckle up, because this is one hell of a story. It all started with what was supposed to be a thoughtful surprise. My wife had been away on a business trip for a week, and I wanted to do something nice. Nothing grand, just one of those small gestures that show you care. I decided to pick her up from the airport earlier than she expected. Maybe we'd grab some coffee, catch up, steal a little extra time together before heading home. I remember standing there, checking the arrival board, actually excited. I imagined her face lighting up when she saw me. But what happened next shattered everything. Instead of seeing my wife walking through the terminal, looking tired but happy to be home, I saw her with someone else. A younger guy, and they weren't just talking. She kissed him. Not a polite peck on the cheek. Not a casual goodbye between colleagues. It was slow, intimate, familiar. My heart stopped. My stomach twisted into a knot. Who the hell was this guy? For a moment, I was frozen, unable to process what I was seeing. But then instinct kicked in. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. I needed proof. If I confronted her now, she'd deny it, twist the story, gaslight me into thinking I was imagining things. But if I had evidence, she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of it. Just as I lifted my phone, she turned. Our eyes met. Her face went pale. She knew she was caught. She rushed toward me, panic flashing across her features, but forcing a casual smile, like she could somehow still play this off. The guy? He didn't even look my way. Just picked up his bag and walked off like this was just another Tuesday for him. Before I could say a word, she started talking fast. Hey, you're early. I was just about to text you. I didn't respond. I just stared. Let her squirm. She kept talking, her words rushing out. Too eager, too rehearsed. Oh, you probably saw that, right? It's nothing. Just a goodbye kiss. Nothing serious. I said nothing. She grew more nervous, scrambling for excuses. It's just a cultural thing. You know, some people kiss on the cheek when they say goodbye. It's like that. Except it wasn't like that. Not even close. Still, I didn't react. Didn't yell. Didn't accuse. I just let the silence stretch between us. Let her feel it. And then, she changed tactics. Listen, let's just go home, okay? We can talk about this there. I'll explain everything. That right there, that was the moment I knew she was guilty. A woman with nothing to hide would defend herself immediately. She'd be indignant. Confused. She'd say, what? No way. You misunderstood. Or that was literally just a goodbye. Why are you acting weird? But my wife's first instinct was to control the conversation. To get me out of public where she could spin her version of the truth. So I played along. I nodded. Still silent. Still watching her. Okay, I finally said. Let's go home. But in my mind, I wasn't going home to hear her excuses. I was going home to figure out just how deep this betrayal went. And she had no idea that the game had already begun. The car ride was suffocating. She kept sneaking nervous glances at me, waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. I just gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead, my mind already working. She shifted in her seat, clearing her throat, probably trying to come up with the perfect excuse. Then, finally, she spoke. Listen, I know how that must have looked, but I swear, it's nothing. Her voice was careful, testing the waters, trying to gauge how much I had actually seen. I nodded slowly, keeping my face blank. Just a coworker, I repeated, like I was considering it. Yeah, she said quickly, latching onto the opportunity. I mean, I know it might have looked bad, but it's really not what you think. He's just a friend. We work together. That's it. I made a small, thoughtful noise in response. Not agreeing. Not disagreeing. Just enough to keep her talking. Inside, I knew she was lying. You don't touch someone like that unless there's something more. But I didn't push. Not yet. She thought she was in the clear. She had no idea that in my mind, the pieces were already shifting into place. By the time we pulled into the driveway, she had relaxed. She thought she'd handled it. Thought she had me fooled. She had no idea that I was already planning my next move. That night, after the most uncomfortable dinner of my life, my wife acted as if everything was normal. And when we finally went to bed, I waited. Eventually, her breathing slowed. Her body stilled. She was asleep. This was my chance. Carefully, I turned over, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. My heart pounded as I entered her password. The screen unlocked instantly. And right then and there, I knew this was only the beginning. That small victory was short-lived because what I saw next turned my stomach inside out. At first, I checked her messages. The ones with her coworker's name were missing, but she wasn't smart enough to cover all her tracks. I went straight to her archived messages, and that's where I found everything she had tried to bury. Their texts weren't just flirtatious. They were raw, intense, and dripping with intimacy. This wasn't some casual fling. It was a full-blown affair. Their messages painted the entire picture. How they planned everything before the trip, their excitement about sneaking away together, even how they coordinated their flights to meet up before boarding. And as I kept scrolling, it got worse. They reminisced about their moments together during the trip, reliving every stolen second. I had to put the phone down. This was the woman I built my life with, the person I trusted the most. And she had done this, so easily, so effortlessly. I took screenshots, sent them to myself as evidence, then archived the chat again. Just as carefully as I had taken it, I placed her phone back on the nightstand. I laid back down, staring at the ceiling, but this time, everything was different. My wife was a liar, and she had no idea that, from this moment on, I was done playing the fool. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I got up like nothing had happened. I made coffee, followed my routine, even gave her a casual, indifferent "have a good day" as she left for work. But the second she was out the door, my real work began. I had a friend in HR at her company, not a best friend, but close enough to talk casually. I shot him a message. Me. Hey, got a sec? Once he replied, I got straight to the point. Me. Quick question, was my wife's business trip last minute? She only mentioned it right before she left. There was a pause. Then his response came through. Him, what business trip? My stomach dropped. I stared at the message, feeling my pulse hammer against my ribs. I kept my tone light. Me. She told me she was traveling for work. Just wanted to check if it was a last-minute scheduling thing. Another pause. Then the final nail in the coffin. Him. Bro. She didn't go on any business trip. She took personal days. I assumed it was just vacation time. I gripped my phone so tightly my fingers ached. So she and her affair partner had taken time off together. And the worst part? She had looked me in the eyes the night before and gaslit me into believing I was paranoid. The rage surged again, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I confronted her now, she'd try to manipulate the situation, twist the truth, maybe even cry her way out of it. I wasn't giving her that chance. Instead, I got to work, methodically, silently. First, I secured myself. If this marriage was ending, I'd make sure I walked away with the advantage. One evening, while we sat on the couch, I sighed and casually said, "You know, with the way the market's been lately, I've been thinking we should sell some of our joint investments. It might be a good time to cash out while prices are still decent." She barely looked up from her phone. "Yeah? You think so?" I nodded, keeping my tone light. "Yeah, I read an article about it. Besides, it'd be nice to free up some money. Maybe put it into something safer." She shrugged. "I guess that makes sense. If you think it's a good idea, I'm fine with it." And just like that, the first piece was set in motion. Over the next few weeks, I carefully orchestrated the sale of our shared assets, ensuring the money flowed into separate accounts. Not all of it, just enough to make it look fair, while secretly securing my portion in an account she couldn't touch. By the end of the month, our finances were almost entirely separate. I had liquidated assets, rerouted funds, and ensured that if things went south, she wouldn't be able to drain me dry. On paper, I was broke. In reality, I was setting the stage for my final move. But I wasn't done. Even though I had the screenshots of her messages, I knew they weren't enough to get her fired for violating company policy on workplace relationships. I needed something she couldn't spin her way out of. So, I called in a professional. A friend had once used a private investigator for a messy divorce. After hearing his story, I knew it was the best move. I found a guy with solid experience and handed him everything. Her schedule, her work location, my suspicions. He assured me that if something was going on, he'd find it. It didn't take long. The first thing he uncovered was that their workplace was already buzzing with rumors. My wife and her AP had been the subject of office gossip for months, but no one had solid proof. Some coworkers had seen them leaving together for long lunch breaks, sometimes not returning for hours. But rumors weren't enough. I needed evidence. So the investigator took things up a notch. Within days, he followed them, tracked their movements, and gathered real proof. Photos of them leaving work together. Videos of them meeting at a secluded spot after hours, staying there for a long time. And then, the most damning piece of all, a crystal-clear image of them inside her car, laughing, touching, looking at each other in a way that was far from professional. It was all coming together. She thought she was playing me. She had no idea I was 3 steps ahead. And soon, very soon, she'd find out just how wrong she was. The real smoking gun? A series of images showed my wife and her coworker in the back seat of her car, parked in the company lot, doing things that left no room for doubt. That was it, the proof I needed. I won't lie, realizing how much of a fool I had been hit me hard. But I didn't want a messy, emotional confrontation where she could cry and manipulate her way out of it. I didn't want to hear her excuses or watch her scramble to fix things. No, I wanted her downfall to be slow and painful. I wanted her to feel her life unravel just like she had unraveled our marriage. So, I went for the one thing that would hit her the hardest, her career. I gathered all the evidence and, using a fake email and a secure anonymous account, leaked everything to the company. I framed it as a concerned employee calling out inappropriate workplace behavior that was tarnishing the company's reputation. No names, no personal details, just cold, hard proof of what was happening right under their noses. The response was immediate. The company, desperate to protect its image, launched an internal investigation. Within a week, my wife and her coworker were called in for questioning. I wasn't there, but I could imagine the panic that set in when she realized someone had exposed her. She must have scrambled for a way to deny it, but the photos didn't lie. At first, they were placed on suspension. The company made it look like they were just investigating, but I knew better. They were buying time to clean up the mess. That evening, she called me, her voice shaking, telling me something crazy was happening at work. She had no idea I was the one pulling the strings. I played along, offering vague sympathy while she drowned in her own mess. Months later, the final blow came. The company let them both go quietly, wanting to avoid a bigger scandal. She lost everything. The career she had spent years building? Gone. The respect of her coworkers? Shattered. Her reputation? Destroyed. Once I saw her collect that blow, I didn't wait. I went straight to a lawyer and filed for divorce, citing infidelity. No room for discussion. When she got served, she lost it. First, she played the shocked and hurt wife, acting like she couldn't believe I would do this. Then came the desperation. She cried, begged, swore up and down it was all a misunderstanding. But her words meant nothing now. At that point, we were still living in the same house, but I had already planned ahead. I knew the court would award her the house, so I had stopped paying the mortgage months earlier. On paper, I was broke. By the time the court handed her the house, my name was already off the asset. No long, messy battle over money. She couldn't take what I didn't have. A week later, I moved out as she decided to contest the divorce agreements in court. It's going to be a long ride, but I don't care. First big lesson, when something feels off, it usually is. People in happy, healthy relationships don't scramble for explanations when caught doing something innocent. If someone is being honest, their story makes sense the first time they tell it. They won't tweak details or try to convince you to ignore what you saw with your own eyes. When my wife started over-explaining instead of just telling the truth, that was all the proof I needed. Another lesson, silence is a powerful tool. When you catch someone doing something shady, reacting instantly is exactly what they expect. They want you to lash out so they can flip the script, making it about your reaction instead of their betrayal. By staying calm, I put her on edge. She was the one panicking, not me. Then there's the financial side of things. Never put yourself in a position where someone else can screw you over financially. If I hadn't been smart enough to separate our bank accounts and sell off shared assets before making my move, this story could have ended very differently. Some people, when caught, will try to hold on to whatever they can, especially money. And finally, the most important lesson, revenge is best served cold. If I had acted on pure emotion, I might have just gotten an apology, some half-baked excuse, and then ended up forgiving her out of guilt. Instead, I played the long game. I gathered proof, protected myself, and made sure that when she fell hard. And trust me, nothing hurts a liar more than losing control of the situation. At the end of the day, betrayal teaches you more about yourself than it does about the person who betrayed you. It shows you what you're willing to tolerate, what you're capable of handling, and how strong you really are when you stop making excuses for other people's bad behavior. If I had just let this go, I would have spent the rest of my life second-guessing myself. Instead, I walked away knowing I didn't just expose a liar. I made sure she faced the consequences of her choices. And that's how you take your power back. She tried reaching out a few times, mostly through mutual friends as we battle things out in court. I ignored every single attempt. She wasn't sorry for what she did. And that's the thing about betrayal. It has a way of boomeranging back to the person who started it.